Okay, I'm live. Going to check things out over on the Rumble and Odyssey. And actually, I'm going to check Twitter because actually today I'm going to be checking in on some questions that I got over on my Twitter post. So I want to deal with some of those. But as you folks are the regular viewers and listeners aware of, got to give it a few minutes. Let some people get the notification. As we know, it's already difficult enough, you know, to get your voice out there. And there's so many suppression tactics already in existence. And that's prior to Bill C-11 coming to fruition. So things are only going to get worse from here, folks. But we're going to talk all about that anyways. But before I do, like I said, I just want to make sure everything's working over on the platforms. By the way, if you folks haven't checked out already, like I say, I'm on Odyssey, I'm on Rumble. You can find me on Twitter. The one good thing about Twitter, at least these days, is don't doesn't seem to be as much suppression. It's kind of hard to know that, to be honest with you, but it does seem to be working out rather well these days. Facebook, it's I mean, I still, post all my stuff on my Canadian Libertarian Facebook page. Actually, this will be the first live stream that I'm not live streaming on Facebook. Actually, Facebook, for some reason, through my streaming software, they have to keep reconnecting with Facebook for some reason. So I don't know what the reason is, but I didn't get that set up and done before I went live. So this won't be live streaming on Facebook, but I did, for the folks that do go to my Canadian Libertarian Facebook page, and thanks for all you folks that do frequent that page, because it's been one of my longer standing social media pages, and there's still a tremendous amount of information on there. So there is some value still there, obviously. But like I say, for now, I'm going to be on Rumble, Twitter, YouTube, of course, and Odyssey. So those are the four places for this evening. You can find that. And like I say, even if you go to my Facebook page, I've posted links to each and every one of those links. So at the very least, no matter what, you can find the stream. Let me just go back. I'm going to close a couple. Actually, I might try to keep, which one was it that shows the chat? I think it was Rumble that actually keeps the chat live. So I should keep that out so I can get the folks that do want to enter the chat. Actually, while I'm waiting, might as well to fill in the time here while I'm waiting for some folks to stream in. Actually, I just wanted to cover something else real quick. Just one sec here, folks. Actually, no, I should save that for another stream entirely. It's just basically, I was just going to bring up a couple articles. I find this is the thing. It's like these people in the established media, do they not realize they don't even pay attention to what they did yesterday? It seems like, never mind, months before. But I've basically got some articles open here, like a CTV. It's a CTV article, actually another one. So one of them is, well, let me just go back to this original one. So this was a CBC article. I'm not even going to bother bringing it up on the screen here, but this is basically a CBC article. Actually, why not? I'll bring it up. Why not? Let me bring it up. That means I'll have to bring this one off. Okay, so present this one instead. Yeah, why not? Let's just bring this up. Because I hate it. I love pointing out the hypocrisy. And I tell you, a man could make a full-time career. Well, I basically have, although I haven't been really getting paid for it, but a man could make a full-time career just pointing out the hypocrisy, the lies and the double standards from the hacks in the established media, in particular, CBC and the CTV, the establishment of the establishment, right? But let me just make sure you folks can see this. So this was an actual article out of CTV News as it pertained to the invocation of the Emergency Act. And just let's just read the headline together, shall we? Now, of course, it's under the politics section, right? Federal government invokes Emergencies Act for first time ever in response to, what is that? Protests and blockades. right? So the headline, the most important aspect of this article, right? If you're the person that's writing this article or the editor or whoever it is this is what's going to catch the person's eyes first, right? That's what they're first going to see. Federal government invokes emergency act for first time ever in response to protests and blockades. Act grants cabinet ability to take special temporary measures that may not be appropriate in normal times. Like, don't you just love the way they cover this? It might be inappropriate. Oh, you mean literally circumventing, making a go around, basically suggesting that Canadians no longer have any rights, denying them their inherent and inalienable. That's the other thing, folks. I mean, I've said this a million times. I'm sure the folks that watch my stuff on a regular basis are like, I know, Bennett, you've beaten that dead horse, but that's another thing, folks. There's new people that come to view these things. But if you think about it, a right, it has to be inherent and inalienable. And it is. I mean, enshrined even in the US Constitution and even in Canada, like it says the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And what the point of God for people who don't believe in God or aren't Christians themselves is what that really means properly is there is a higher authority than politicians, than fallible human beings. And God and the rule of law are these concepts that are supposed to be right. That's the highest. And it even acknowledges in whether you're talking about our Bill of Rights or the US Constitution, is that's the supreme law of the land. That's what they suggest, right? The supreme law of the land. And the supreme law of the land acknowledges, right? And if you ask any one of these lawyers on the Supreme Court, where do rights come from? Are they granted to me by government? Well, they'd have to if they were being honest. They'd say, actually, no. They're just that's the default of a human being. Properly is when you're born, you're supposed to be a free human being. You're not supposed to be a slave, subject, or served to any ruling class, right? That's kind of the things that we learned post Enlightenment, right? As Westerners, pretty simple stuff, really, or at least it should be. So they're inherent and inalienable. Yet the government invoked an emergency act that, like the nice language they used here, but that basically said, nope, we lied. We're taking them away because we said so. We wrote this little thing in the Constitution that says, oh, here's all your rights. And we acknowledge that the rule of law and supremacy of law, but we're going to forget all that because we wrote this little clause down here. See, right? We got this little clause down here that says, oh, we can just ignore all that shit, right? But anyways, back to the article. So basically, the federal government invoked the Emergency Act for the first time ever in response to protests and blockades. So let me just bring that off here. And let's use this CTV article. I just found it just so ironic, so amazingly ironic. But like I say, it's nothing really surprises me these days. But here we go. So look at this CTV article. Right? Oh, no, this isn't the truckers. This isn't the convoy. This isn't the protests in Ottawa for people who have actually lost their jobs. That's the thing. The trucker protests, right? The convoy, that was all about the federal government mandating truckers, to get vaccinated. Meanwhile, we all know that vaccines never prevented people from getting COVID or preventing them from spreading it. So we know that it was just arbitrarily imposed. It's an authoritarian edict. That's fact. Nobody can deny that anymore, although at the time they sure shit was, right? But basically, you're talking about people who were protesting the loss of their jobs, of their livelihoods, of their ability to sustain themselves. Kind of important. And the fact that the government was trying to force or impose these vaccines on them, force them to take it, right? Whereas today, the public sector, who've already, many of them gotten wage increases. Look, some of them a couple times over the pandemic, right? And people who already doing way better than most people are. And the people that, what do you mean pandemic? Nobody loses your job during a pandemic when you work for the man, right? So these are people who are already massively entitled, already doing much better than most Canadians. And yet they want way more. And they want to be able to get not just mow this, mow that, mow everything, but they want to be able to do that while working from home so they can sip their bottles of wine, right? It's really hard to hide that stuff, I guess, when you're at the workplace, right? Not to mention, you can kind of almost understand the fact that they don't want to work in those Want to talk about shitty environments to work in? Yeah, can you imagine? No wonder they want to work from home. But too bad, so sad. You signed up on the bottom line, and you're massively rewarded for being the good little order followers for the man. You made that deal. You shook hands with the devil. Now suck it up, Buttercup, and deal with it. But no, what are these folks out there? They're basically out there doing. What is this? What's this suggest? Let's just read this headline here. See what they're saying. Striking public servants block access to government buildings and key infrastructure. Really, key infrastructure. You mean things like bridges? Yes, because that's what we're talking about. Hundreds of public servants marched across the Portage Bridge between Ottawa and Gatineau, Quebec, where some of the biggest federal buildings are located, holding up traffic for a short period. Short period, right? But anyways, we've already heard, and I'm sure you folks are. So I won't actually waste too much time. But they're actually blocking ports of entry and bridges and stuff. Blockading, right? That's what it would normally be called. And normally, well, as past so far as under the past context that we've seen is if that stuff happens, well, Trudeau invokes the Emergency Act because he cares so much about the economy, right? Doesn't want to stop the flow of goods and right. Although we know it's bullshit. There was petty vengeance against people who just wouldn't follow his orders or edicts. That's what the Emergency Act was truly invoked for. But I mean, even based on their own bullshit and their own lies and rhetoric that they espouse to suggest the reason why they invoked the Emergency Act. Well, where is it, Trudeau? Hey, you already done it once. How come you're not doing it again? Oh, that's right, too, because these are your peeps. Right? So, little something for thee, but not for me kind of deal, right? There's double standards to out the ass these days anyways. Anyways, then there was just this other one I was going to show you, which is the majority of Canadians support the Peace Act demands for wage premiums, work from home rights. And yeah, it was an Angus Reid Institute that asked Angus Reid members, right? Here's the methodology. The Angus Reid Institute conducted an online survey from April 20th to 21st, 2023 among a representative randomized sample of 1,276 Canadian adults who are members of the Angus Reid Forum, right? Right? So they ask a bunch of people who are part of this group, right? I wonder if they got a lot of group thing going on there. And they all seem to agree. And once again, just like I said in my tweet on Twitter, is like, yeah, a randomized sample of anything of 1,200, especially from a particular forum, yeah, that is not representative, truly representative of the thoughts or the opinions or perspectives of 39 million Canadians or 30 plus million. We're not going to be asking, infants, I suppose, but no, come on. Anyways, let's get back to the task at hand here. So now I can actually close up those articles. Oh, yeah, I do see there's some peeps in the chat there now. I'll just say hi to some of you folks in the chat before I get right into it. Oh, there we go. Hey, Steve the Canadian. I believe this is the gentleman. Hey, Steve, nice. Thanks for joining the live stream. But this is one of the gentlemen I'm going to be referencing one of his questions here a little bit later on once I get through the chat here, or at least some of the chat. But yeah, thanks for joining the live stream, Steve the Canadian. Really appreciate that. And definitely I'll be getting to your question here shortly. Big win for the Gestapo. Yeah, big time, huh? The Gestapo, man, they've been on a winning streak lately. I got to tell you, Liberty, not so much. Not so much. Amazing how their perspectives change based off what they want. Yeah, right. What's this? Dankus Memicus. Greg Wycliffe confronted Peace Act strikers with the same thing in a live stream today. Well, that's awesome. I'll have to check that out, actually. Thanks for mentioning that, Dankus Memicus. Memicus. Yeah, that's awesome. That's pretty cool, actually. I'll definitely check that out. Okay, let me just check a couple more here. Once again, bitch boy leaves the country to promote his bullshit while all this. I know, right? I mean, what's up with that? I mean, even for the Emergency Act, right? Or actually before the Emergency Act is when the truckers were going on the way to Ottawa and we were getting close to Ottawa. That was the exact time that Trudeau got COVID for the, I don't know, what was it, the second or third time, right? Oh, can't be here. I mean, just the fact that the man lacked the courage to stand in front of these people and whatever you wanted to do. Talk to I mean, he didn't even have even if he just wanted to stand there and finger wag at them and do his stupid bullshit and put on his little fucking acting thing, right? But he wasn't even willing to do that, right? This is a man. I mean, well, we've talked about this extensively, many of you folks in the chat, but this is a poor excuse for a man. This is a guy that is very, very, very manipulative and he's very sneaky. Like I've always said, and I'm sure you folks are familiar with it, but I personally am not a fan of the strong man, of the tyrants, of the dictators, right? But I will say this: at least you can see them fuckers coming. They're brave enough to represent themselves in all the blatant tyranny that they want to bring upon the masses, right? So at least I can at least say, as a man, I at least don't care for them or anything, but there's a tiny idiom of respect for someone that at least has the courage of their convictions, right? Trudeau, no, 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 no. Like I said before, he's the kind of guy that wants to pretend he's your best friend. He's doing it for your best interest and for your own good, right? He wants to tyrannize you. He wants to dominate you. He wants to dictate and control every aspect of your social and economic lives, but it's for your own good, right? Right? He wants you to allow him to get up close enough to you, right? Maybe give you one of those hugs or something. And while he's reaching around, he'll shag you just like that. That's Trudeau. That is the kind of man that guy is. Sorry, I got no respect for those kind of people, right? So, anyways, yeah, I could go on a while, but yeah, bitch boy is right. Bitch boy is right. I'll just check one more here. Like I say, folks, oh wait, now here we go. What's this? I was watching Wycliffe's video being told to stop harassing them for asking questions. Right? Anyways, yeah, I'm sure it's crazy. I'll definitely check into it. Actually, what was the other thing? Oh, by the way, I did want to actually mention something real quick. It's on Rumble. Actually, let me bring it up here because it for those of you folks that do go on Minds, as you know, I'm on Minds. Minds is a great social media platform. Really like it. One of my favorite social media platforms for sure. But I'm just going to open this up so I can tell you what channel it's actually on. It's like 4 hours long. So, yeah, you're going to want to do it in chunks. Yeah, there we go. Oh, it's on that Destiny. I'm not too familiar with this guy. The guy with the blue hair, he goes by the name, well, partially blue hair, dark hair on the sides, blue on the top. Kind of seen him making the rounds to some shows that I normally watch and podcasts and stuff. So I'm starting to learn a little bit about this guy. I don't know much about him, but I do know that this is uploaded to his channel. I'm sure it's on other channels as well. This is the one that I got linked to, but it's a Minds event. So you know Bill Ottman, I believe Ian Crossland. Ian Crossland is the guy that's on with the he's on Timcast. He's the guy that's got that cool alien spaceship that levitates there. Anyways, it's and of course Bill Ottman, the CEO of Minds. Who else is on? Alex Jones is on there. Luke Radowski. Oh, anyways, and of course this Destiny. Anyways, it's like a 4 hour long podcast. It's on this channel Destiny. Like I say, if you go over to Rumble and just type in Destiny, you'll find this person's channel, and it must be the most recent. And like I say, it's called Minds Event at Vulcan Gas Company in Austin. So it happened down there in Texas. But it's like I say, it's 4 hours long, and I watched the first little bit before going live, and yeah, it looks like it's going to be a good one. So definitely check that out. I definitely recommend it. And if you haven't already, because like I say, with these things, and you know, the dominant players, in particular, your Facebooks and your YouTube and stuff, you know, they might try to fight it somewhat, but they'll probably be the ones that'll jump on board with obeying the edicts of big government right here in Canada. But you know, alternative platforms, you know, or sites like Minds or Gab or Rumble or Odyssey, and those ones, you know, you probably have a lot more chance of still being able to find the content that you like over on those ones. So, like I say, at the very least, between now and at some point in time over the weekend, just I think it would be wise and prudent to make sure you know, especially your favorite content creators or people that you like to follow, get yourself set up so you're following them on some of these other platforms just in case, right? Just in case, to be a little bit prepared, because I tell you, folks, things are are definitely going to change, and it's going to happen. They're going to want to do it in a way, that boiling frog approach. I can't see them going full on, you know, wide open to full totalitarian right off the bat, right? No, they want to kind of sneak this stuff in there, just kind of, like I say, keep turning that temperature up just a little bit at a time, right? Keep that nudging thing happening. But anyway, so yeah, let me just get to, so this is the part I want to bring this article first and foremost. This is from Open Media. Shout out to Open Media. They do a really good job of standing up for freedom of speech in Canada, and I think they did a really good job kind of laying out, Bill C-11, what it is, what it seeks to do, and all that stuff. So let me just use this, like I say, article and go from there. So start from here. Okay, maybe I should bring myself down into the bottom part here so that you folks. Actually, no, that's going to block it. Actually, if I do that, and that's going to make it too small, isn't it? All right, let's try doing it this way then. Okay, we'll just go back to this way so that you folks can kind of read along if you want. So, what's wrong with Bill C-11? On FAQ. Frequently. Anyways, this was by Ramneet Buller, September 28th, 2022. So it's actually not even the most recent, but it definitely covered a lot of really important stuff. The only thing I don't think that's in this is the part where the Senate actually, sent it back. The Senate got it, and then they sent it back with a whole lot of other recommendations. And one of the biggest recommendations was to take out any wording that had to do with actual content creators, individual content creators, to alleviate the concerns of content creators. But even after the Senate sent it back to the House, the Liberals, and they basically rejected it. So they were unwilling to put wording in this bill that would guarantee that they're not going to go after individual content creators. So the fact that they're unwilling to put that in writing in the bill, put all their political rhetoric aside and just, the reality is obviously that means they are gunning for individual content creators. Common questions and answers on Bill C-11. Update. On March 30th, 2023, the House of Commons passed Bill C-11 and rejected crucial amendments. Well, here it is. Up to the bill. The Senate will consider Bill C-11 whether to reject or accept the decision of the House. For more information, check out our recent campaign here. So basically, like I say, it went back to the Senate, and the Senate, what was it? I think it was only 15 or 25 of them actually wanted to send it back, but there just wasn't enough. And so they basically just, all right, it's done, it's passed, and it's actually moved on to Royal Assent, and basically we're talking, it's a done deal now. So Canada's House of Commons has passed Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act, and the Senate is in the last stage of considering it before becoming law. Oh yeah, this part, okay, so it's already law now. So this is the part actually where I think is most important. So what is Bill C-11? Bill C-11, also known as the Online Streaming Act, is the updated version of Bill C-10, first introduced last year by former Canadian Heritage Minister Stephen Guilbeault. Now spearheaded by current Heritage Minister Pablo Rodriguez, Bill C-11 partially fixes some of C-10's faults without fixing its core problems. Bill C-11 expands the Broadcasting Act that grants the CRTC regulatory powers over radio and television to cover all audiovisual content on the internet, including content on platforms like TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, and podcast clients. Under Bill C-11, all platforms hosting audiovisual content that are not specifically excluded must make financial contributions to producing officially recognized CanCon, currently defined by a 1980s era point system built around legacy media, broadcast media, right? So that's important. Due to this, does that system support Canadian storytelling? Unevenly at best. In recent years, productions about U.S. President Trump and the English Tudors have been greenlit as CanCon, while lavish productions of Ironically, Canadian stories like The Handmaid's Tale and Turning Red have not met the standard. Under Bill C-11, platforms must also make CanCon discoverable by filling our feeds and search results with a mandatory quota of official CanCon content or face stiff financial penalties from the CRTC. So listen, let me just say this right off the top of the bat, or right off the bat, I should say. So the fact that they're mandated, right, to make CanCon not just discoverable, but there has to be a specific and it's a mandatory quota of official CanCon. And it says official CanCon content. So whatever that number is, right? Whatever that quota is, that just use logic, folks. By natural extension, if a certain percentage of content has to be whatever the government is deeming it has to be, then that means that there is other content that they're not going to promote and you will not see or hear by sheer fact that it'll have to be removed or replaced and substituted with this Canadian content. Now, of course, they're going to be able to pick and choose selectively which content, gets pushed off. I mean, come on. You're talking about human beings, folks, right? Fallible, imperfect human beings like we all are. So you know darn well that content is going to be stuff that whatever they deem that they don't want, right? Or is easily substituted. And we've already seen the kind of people, like I say, think about, like I say, free thinkers, libertarians, right? Voluntarists, independent types, right? People who are against the status quo, the status, whatever you want to identify, apolitical, non-political, whatever, right? But anyone who challenges the status quo, the current system, right? The current paradigm, those are the people, bar none, basically almost, that are constantly targeted for suppression or censorship. And I mean, me as a Gen Xer, and for all you folks who are of my age, we're all quite familiar with how limited and restricted. But that's the thing. We didn't realize how limited or restrictive it was to live under the era of just cable television, right? In like say the 80s or 90s or even the early 2000s, although I think by that time I was already moved to the internet by a sizable. I've been on the internet basically since the 80s myself, but a lot of people haven't, and I definitely still had the cable and all that stuff. Not like the internet in the 80s was spectacular, right? With your 300 baud modem, you weren't watching any live streaming, that's for sure. But basically, I remember, and a lot of Canadians remember what it was like living under where the only thing that you could really genuinely watch or listen to was whatever, right? Rogers or Bell, whatever you were using at the time to watch for like cable television. And of course, who dictated what they were allowed to have on their airways or through the cables, right? Well, it was the CRTC. And I'll tell you, folks, I would have never, if I to this day had to rely on what I could see or hear on cable television to learn about the world around me, I got to tell you, folks, I'd be still, and I'll admit I was quite ignorant to a lot of things back in those days. And I would still probably be that way if I did not have access to the free and open internet, where I could find amazing content from people that I would have never, ever learned about, right? People like Ayn Rand or Stefan Molyneux, right? Well, Ayn Rand's no longer with us, but I mean, lots of people who have helped me in my intellectual journey and develop my thought processes and understand philosophy and history and geography. I would have never achieved or attained the kind of knowledge I have today if it were not for the fact that there was a free and open internet. I had that accessible to me. And same with you folks. But once again, if the CRDC, if the government gets to the point where the internet is sanitized to the point where it's basically just like cable TV. And we're definitely seeing that already in terms of the advertisers, right? Even now on things like YouTube and stuff, it's, I remember towards the end of when I did have cable TV, it was to the point where it's like, I was just so happy to get rid of it because it was like 5 minutes of the show, 5 minutes of commercials, 5 minutes of the show, 5. It's like, oh, come on, really though? You can't even get into sitting down and enjoying it without, right? But basically, I'm even seeing that with social media. It's kind of leaning towards that way where it's the advertisers, right, are dominating control of things because they're the ones that are pulling up the cash. I've always said the pay to play model, pay directly, right? That's the way. Eliminate as many middlemen as possible. That hopefully at some point in time going forward, people will realize that that's the proper model. That's a proper business model, right? To circumvent all this manipulation is direct, consumer to producer, right? No middlemen at all, and just leave me the hell alone. But anyways, I digress. Let me get back to reading a little bit more of this. Um, yeah, or face stiff financial penalties from the CRTC. So, whether they want to do it or not, if you want to avoid stiff financial penalties, you're going to do it. Penalties. CanCon support currently largely excludes small and digital first Canadian content creators. While Bill C-11 instructs the CRTC to review CanCon definitions, there's little guidance on how to do so and no certainty for when it will complete its review or whether digital creators will be appropriately included in future support. Will Bill C-11 give the CRTC the powers to regulate your posts? The short answer, yes. Like Bill C-10, Bill C-11 gives the CRTC unprecedented regulatory authority to monitor all online audiovisual content. To monitor all online audiovisual content, folks. So that's a big thing, right? This power extends to penalizing content creators and platforms, and through them, content creators that fail to comply. Is in Bill C-11, Section 4, bracket 1, establishes a limited exception for regulation for some types of online audiovisual content. Unfortunately, most audiovisual content will still be subject to CRTC regulations under the current draft of the bill. Why? Section 422 reestablishes CRTC regulation of most audiovisual content at the CRTC's discretion based on 3 criteria. Whether the content generates revenue for someone, indirectly or directly, whether any party of the content has been broadcast on a more traditional broadcasting platform, and whether the content has been assigned a unique identifier under any international standard system. Guess what? Most content on the internet generates revenue for someone, somewhere, and has unique identifiers tagged to content. As a result, most online audiovisual content is still at risk of being regulated and taxed by the CRTC. The government is promising to apply further limitations to this power via a policy direction from cabinet after C-11 passes. Actually, talking about taxes, because risk of being regulated and taxed. Because I got to point this out too, folks. When I first got monetized on YouTube, now I didn't make a whole lot of money, right? Not a tremendous amount of money by any stretch, but for the longest time there was no taxes, right? Never had to file anything. It's an American company. I'm not using any Canadian infrastructure, right? I'm working directly for an American company. And even though I might be sitting in my home, it's all this information is traveling through the digital sphere, right? Through the internet, through the airwaves, right? Nobody gets to claim ownership over that. So I was really working for an American company. So why the fuck would I have to pay Canadian taxes when but now they do, right? Now you do got to claim all this stuff on your taxes. So that's another thing to take into account. Government wants to get a chunk of anything. If you got a nickel somewhere, government going to want a piece of that, right? Okay, where are we at here? The government is promising to apply further limitations to this power via a policy direction from cabinet after C-11 passes. But a policy direction can be amended or replaced by a new direction at any time. This is not a binding defense of our content like restrictions within C-11 would be. The government or a future government could decide to use the CRTC's new powers to start regulating or limiting user online posts, and it would all be entirely legal. Kind of a big deal, right? Kind of a big deal. How will Bill C-11 affect the content you see online? You'll see less of the content you want most. According to the government, Bill C-11 will increase visibility for some officially recognized Canadian content creators but their tool for doing this is manipulating our playlists, feeds, and algorithmic recommendations. Well, this is the other thing. Let me just point this out. As it is right now, this is how you know that no matter what kind of political rhetoric, legalese, or language they use to defend this stuff, right? Not here per se, but when I'll be dealing with other areas of it, is as it is now, anybody, the internet is free and open. There's nothing to prevent anybody in this country from going to watch. You can go and watch right now 100% canned content, or well, I guess that would be canned con. That's the second part of con, right? Or the canned con. But you can literally right now, if you want to sit from morning till night and spend all day watching canned con, there's nothing to stop you. Not a thing. Nothing. Right? You can go there, do your thing. So what is the point? They can use as much, like I say, political language and legalese and misdirections, right, as they want. But the truth of the matter is, there's no need or genuine, actual purpose, logical purpose to impose this on the Canadian people, if not to selectively suppress certain content and promote others. That is what this is all about, folks. About. That's what it's all about. I am Canadian after all. Okay, let me get back into it here. But they're a tool for doing okay, yeah. This means that the CRTC will be picking winners and losers, forcing some officially recognized content up in feeds and recommendations while downranking or hiding other content we'd otherwise receive. Like whatever. Like, how about you just treat us like adults? We'll just pick no, that's just what was I thinking? What was I thinking? Sorry, my bad. Global content and content that best fits your search criteria as a platform's algorithm understands it will become harder to find. The content you want to see that doesn't fit the CRTC's vision of CanCon is pushed down on your feed. But wait, doesn't Bill C-11 ban the CRTC from forcing an algorithm on us? Yes, but it doesn't really matter. Under Section 918 of Bill C-11, the government bars the CRTC from explicitly requiring platforms to use a particular algorithm or source code to construct their feeds. But the CRTC is requiring, oh yeah, this is the better part, sir. But the CRTC is requiring outcomes, and manipulating algorithms is the only way to achieve the government's requirements to promote official CanCon content. First, CRTC Chair Ian Scott has confirmed. Oh, CRTC Chair Ian Scott has confirmed this during testimony. So they're saying, oh, no, we're not telling you precisely what kind of algorithm you must use. Right? We're just telling you that you got to make this happen, and you figured out how to do it. So as long as they get the end result, they're like, well, I don't really care how you make the sausage as long as I get the sausage. But you're still going to get the sausage. Yeah. And for those of us who don't, aren't part of the establishment, oh, we'll be getting the sausage all right. Right up the, never mind. I won't even go there. But anyways, yeah. Something along those lines, right? Okay, where else we at here? Yeah. The CRTC will decide what our experience on platforms should look like, and it will be up to the platforms to decide how they will manipulate our feeds to get it done. In other words, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's an algorithm manipulating duck. Exactly. Now let's get to this part because this is something that really matters for someone like myself. How will Bill C-11 affect small and digital first Canadian creators? It's worth remembering that Canadian digital creators are telling our cultural stories on new non-broadcast internet platforms every day. As such, they should be equal recipients of any dedicated Canadian storytelling fund, but excluded from top-down broadcasting standards regulation. Bill C-11 does the opposite, applying outdated broadcasting standards and financial regulations to their work without updating CanCon to support them financially. Many small digital creators may be regulated as producing broadcast content. C-11 attempts to distinguish between professional and amateur content based on an unspecified quota for how much money a creator makes, how much money creators generate from a certain platform, what kind of brand deals creators are involved in, etc. As written, C-11's baseline assumption is that small digital creators are not professional enough to be regulated. The new CanCon requirements will make it nearly impossible for independent creators to benefit from any financial or promotional gain from CanCon. Rather than having diverse voices on the internet, C-11 would penalize the success that creators generate. Many independent creators post on multiple channels to enhance their discoverability and showcase their work to different demographic bases. This common practice would subject content creators to C-11 regulation. If their content does not meet CanCon requirements, their overall discoverability is affected on all channels they use for their work. Prove you're Canadian enough or watch your views drop. Bill C-11 establishes a two-tier system for Canadian creators. Those who find algorithmically manipulated content to be categorized as CanCon will mean those creators who don't meet CanCon requirements will be pushed down on feeds, while those that do meet the requirements will be prioritized. But being CanCon isn't necessarily a good thing. There's a trap hidden in the new CanCon system. The CRTC can force content into our feeds, but it can't force us to watch or enjoy it. When users are presented with content but don't stick with it, though, algorithms understandably penalize that content and are less likely to show it to other users. Now consider that most content creators aren't necessarily creating content for the purpose of it being Canadian, and their audiences may be primarily made up of viewers in the US, EU, Asia, and the rest of the world. For these creators, having their content presented to Canadian viewers that aren't interested or engaged by it would be a net drag, hurting their ranking with their global audience, right? That's another thing to think about. Yeah, so I won't use too much time reading this, but I would agree with the assessment here to a degree. The real motive of the Online Streaming Act is simple. Streaming platforms and creators on them are bringing in more and more revenue, and legacy media wants a piece of that pie. Although Bill C-18 is where they're really pushing for getting a piece of that pie, but Bill C-11 too, for sure, to a lesser degree, right? Legacy broadcasting media companies like Bell Media, Rogers, and Chorus Entertainment have built themselves a comfortable and oligopolistic domestic market in Canada during the broadcasting era and dominated the media landscape for many decades. But the old narrow system isn't working anymore. Television broadcast revenue has been on the decline since 2014. Young people don't use cable TV or listen to radio. Better than building competing Rather than building competing online services on terms that attract people, the legacy media giants want a cut of the profits from streaming services that are increasingly popular in the 21st century media market. Let's take a quick trip through how the current system works and how Bill C-11 will change it. Um, I'm not sure if you folks want me to read all that. I'll read a little bit more. Why not? Under CanCon's current point system for determining if something is Canadian enough, a production must earn 6 out of 10 points based on how many key creative functions are performed by Canadians. Broadcasting companies are forced to pay into the Canadian Media Fund for producing official content, but receive much of that funding back for their CanCon productions. Under Bill C-11, streaming companies like Netflix will also be forced to pay to produce CanCon, but will be ineligible to receive funding from the Canadian Media Fund, even when producing Canadian content. Right? That's a pretty big double standard there, right? Result a direct money transfer from streaming platforms Canadians like to legacy broadcast services we increasingly don't. What a deal. C-11 vests regulatory power in the CRTC to dictate what will be regulated under the bill and what won't. A revision to the definition of CanCon is supposedly coming, but the CRTC will set the terms of CanCon and exclude whatever content they choose. Right now, legacy media remains at the top of the food chain, and independent creators, who the bill allegedly considers, are at the bottom. It's worth pointing out that the CRTC has long been a close friend of legacy media outlets like Bell. You might know that current CRTC Commissioner Ian Scott even describes Bell CEO Mirko Bibic as a personal friend and has recently been embroiled in controversy following a private beer meeting with him after a crucial CRTC decision that went against Bell's interest. Anyways, folks, yeah, I think that's probably good enough. But I'll definitely make sure to place a link to this excellent write up by Open Media in the description of this video. Actually, I believe this one is already linked up. I'm just going to just real quickly get back into the chat here. Say hi to a few folks. And actually, then I do want to get into some of the questions actually that some folks had over on Twitter. I'll bring that up soon. Not sure what this one is. Look up Boyd Anderson. He has the truth. Where is the gold? Oh, you guys must be talking amongst yourself. Uh, what's this one here? Bearded Ginger. Hey, what's going on, Bearded Ginger? Thanks for joining the live stream. I love it. Called us all bigots and racist for honking horns, yet go and do the same shit with cowbells and think they're groundbreaking. I know. Yeah, double standards, right? It's unbelievable, and it's just so blatantly in your face, right? Got that right. He's a massive snake. Oh, hey, what's going on, Anarcha? Cooking dinner. Hope it's something good. I'm sure it is. Otherwise, you wouldn't be cooking it for yourself, right? Anyways, in and out of the stream. Good evening, Ben. Well, thank you for jumping in and out, Anarcha. Really appreciate that, and have yourself a good feed and a good evening. I wonder will Bill C-11 with Bill C-11 passing, how long will it be till having a VPN will be illegal? Are these psychos going to go the road of the US? Well, that's the other thing. Now, I do have a VPN and I do use it periodically. I will just suggest that be proactive in what VPN you do choose. Mine, I don't know if they're all that way, but I do find sometimes that it does seem to affect my internet quality, like my speed and stuff when I'm using them. Which is why even like right now, I'm not actually using a VPN while I'm live streaming as much as like sometimes I think there may be benefits to it, but there sometimes can be drawbacks. But that's the thing. And I remember hearing a lot of that information, from the Snowden revelations and listening to a lot of the stuff he said and the things that that came out as a result of the reporting by Glenn Greenwald. And I remember basically Edward Snowden pointing out and others. Electronic Freedom Foundation, that's another good place to get some information about online privacy stuff. But basically, all they really need to know is your IP address, right? So anything you do after that, yeah, right. But they really technically they do have the capability to kind of get you at your endpoint, at your IP point. Now, once again, there are things like the Tor, the onion router, that can circumvent that. But I've also heard reports that, I don't know if it was a firm out of Israel or even a couple in the United States have even figured out ways to try to get around or circumvent the multiple layers that the Tor browser and router gives you, right? So I don't know. Like the VPN thing, it's definitely something I would say, at least in the interim, get yourself a good, respectable, good quality VPN because I definitely think at least for the interim, for the next little while, it will prove to be beneficial. But once again, to me, it's all about intent, right? That's the other thing too is who's to suggest they're going to be even fully competent in doing that, right? There still might be areas in the internet where there are some freedoms because, right? I mean, drugs were illegal for like marijuana. It was illegal for a long time, but never really slowed down. Even now, with government trying to take over the marijuana industry, the black market still flourishes, right? So, you know, hell, prisons, right? You're not allowed to have contraband in prisons, but people get it all the time. So all this top-down authoritarianism and tyranny trying to be imposed on us by the liberal government, oh, they have the intention. The intent is there. Fortunately, or hopefully for us, they're not going to be as competent at trying to suppress, playing that whack-a-mole as the people who care about their freedoms, the geniuses that understand the internet, that understand the underlying code, that understand the underlying structures and the infrastructure of the internet, who will be out there helping us to stand in defense of our freedoms and to circumvent some of these censorship or these restrictions imposed on us. I do have a tremendous amount of faith and hope in what the people can do. Like I say, the geniuses among us who care about the freedoms, because the people who are fighting for the freedoms, they got a lot more gumption and a lot more wherewithal, right? The incentive is much higher for them than the lackey at the CTV to keep playing whack-a-mole all day long. So we got to try to keep that in mind. But I definitely suggest that, like I say, you take the time to another thing that I do, and this doesn't really might not even have anything really to do per se with this online streaming bill. But one thing I have done for years now, and I'll just point this out, is use a key scrambler, right? And you can get these on the internet. Now, make sure when you do, if you do, you know, put any kind of extension on your on your browser, make sure that you read what these things are asking in terms of permissions, because sometimes these things can be even more intrusive than what they're trying to protect you from. But a keystroke scrambler basically makes it so that nobody can listen, or not listen per se, but they can't know what you're typing. They scramble everything you type. So that could help not just for entering passwords, but for a multitude of things. So that may be another way to help, is have a key scrambler. Another thing, these things, these algorithms, right? They're going to be looking for keywords and terms for sure. That's how algorithms work. So, avoiding using just like a lot of the geniuses on the internet that come up with all this different language that we use these days, right? But I mean, that's difficult as well. But yeah, there will be ways to try to get around this stuff. I don't doubt for a minute. But yeah, trying a VPN, probably not a bad idea. $1 million fine in 10 years, just crazy. Yeah, the Senate failed all Canadians. I know, right? And what was it that I shared that one senator? What was he? I think there's only 15 or 25 of them that tried to fight the good fight, but yeah, they were outnumbered. This is the thing in a democracy, folks, right? This is a really, really big problem that people really need to start thinking about, right? When you live in democracy, it sounds good theory until you find yourself in a minority and the mob is trying to take away your inherent rights and freedoms. Then is democracy that great? Well, I don't know, right? Not necessarily. Anyways, let me get over here to dealing with. So this is what the government of Canada had to say. So let's just read a little bit what theirs had to say. And then I will be getting to the question. Actually, you know what? Let me get to the questions over on Twitter first. I'm going to bring that up because there's definitely a lot of stuff going on Twitter. Let me bring up my notifications. I don't know why. Maybe I should ask someone else too. I don't know why it is on my Twitter. It gets up to a person and 100 others have retweeted my tweet, but it never goes above 100. Is that the limiting number on Twitter? Or am I being, no, I don't know. Anyways, but just checking here. So be okay. All right, let me bring this up. Reload. Okay, let me get a couple, see what we got here. I'm just going to bring this up here, folks. Present, share screen, Twitter, our notifications here. So yeah, I think you folks should be able to see that there now, right? Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I feel that we need to do more. Not sure what that is, but holy crap, are we ever in trouble as a society? That's a comment by Darlene Koppler on Twitter. But let me just get back down here, like I say, to some of these questions. There we go. Okay, so let me just bring this one up. I think you folks should be able to see that, right? Yeah. Yeah. So this was from Steve the Canadian. Honest answer, I don't know. My only suggestion would be 34 million Canadians stand up and say no. Even then, is it enough? I give Canadians a lot of shit, but pretty much everyone has come around to the scam, and it's still push. Like many, I am at my wits' end. And yeah, I feel you there, Steve. I felt you when I was reading this earlier on. It's so frustrating. And like I say, I can tell you that with absolute certainty that if 34 million people, no, 34 million Canadians actually took a little time, just a very, very small amount of time, to show solidarity with each other, come together and stand in full defense of their freedoms and in defiance against this government overreach. For sure, government would be, I mean, you would find out how quickly, right, the power of the people comes to fruition and how quickly those in government would stick their tail between their legs and run as fast as they could. The problem is we don't live in that environment, right? That's the thing. Even myself, I'm always hopeful all the time, and I do. I try to stay positive all the time, right? I don't like to get into the negative aspects of it because you can beat yourself down quite big, quite easily, and get stewed in that kind of defeatist mindset or attitude. And I refuse to go down that road. But I'm also a realist. I have to acknowledge the fact that so far, and I wish it was just online. It's like, no, this is just online. It's just people being manipulated online. In the real physical world, people will not put up with this stuff. But we have the last 3 years of COVID with that was real world on the ground in your face evidence that damn the majority, the mob, right? Canada, the majority of Canadian citizens were willing to go along with massively severe restrictions, lockdowns, impositions. I mean, we all know, and I won't rehash all the devastating things that took place over those last 3 years. Just the amount of, I mean, even just the videos, right? The never ending string of videos of all these mindless order followers going after people out playing hockey outside, young guys out playing hockey outside, right? Or people that are walking their dogs or going to the park, right? Or walking along the beach alone. I mean, we've seen the kind of tyranny that the order followers and how quick they were to impose it. And then the biggest spectacle of that, and thank goodness for all the citizens that had their phones, the cameras, right? Right. But when the Emergency Act was invoked and all those, thousands of order followers, badgeless, nameless, covered from head to toe so that you have no clue who they are, right? People that get dressed up like that, right? Just like Antifa, if you're all dressed up where you're unrecognizable and basically armed as if you're going into a war type scenario, those people are looking to fuck some people up, and they did. And they did relentlessly. The things that they did, and that was just the boots on the ground, but that also required bankers to say, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'll confiscate their money. Yeah, I'll shut down their bank accounts." Right? Corporations, trucking companies going after their own people for not following these authoritarian mandates and edicts. How many thousands and thousands? I could be 100,000. I don't know the numbers, but how many Canadians, truck drivers, lost their livelihood, had to say, listen, I don't know. I don't know how we're going to pay the bills. I don't have a paycheck. Why? Because they chose not to get a jab that we know. Every one of us know now. I knew a long time ago. But even the Canadians that, were either willfully blind or just ignorant and didn't care or just fall for the rhetoric. But even they are coming around now to realizing it. But yet, even knowing all that took place, even knowing how much the government lied, manipulated, distorted facts, right, and propagandized us, even with the article that came out and showing where the military were basically using wartime propaganda techniques, right, against Canadians, all of that, and yet, while Bill C-11, right, it's been a couple years this stuff has been in the mix, right, and yet it's still come to fruition with barely a whimper. Yes, yes. And once again, for the people who are reading my tweet, yes, folks, if you are one of those folks that stood up, right, I'm not talking to you. I don't know why some people, and I love you folks, really, like the ones that at least are willing to participate, but just, I know, listen, we all have emotions and sometimes you can let it get the best of you. But when I'm accusing people of not standing up for the freedom, if you have, well, you must at least acknowledge I'm not talking about you, right? But we're in a minority position, like I said, and responded to so many people, right? Who said, I did. And thank you. Just like I put in my post, thank you. Every single one of you who did stand up for your freedoms. But obviously, we're in a minority. Obviously, the government felt no real pressure. I mean, I remember even early on, right? But a lot of that was American laws they were trying to impose on them. Like, remember PIPA, SOPA, and all them. I remember the big social media platforms, they were all over, everywhere, fighting against it, right? Whereas with Bill C-11 and C-18, yeah, YouTube has said, no, we disagree with it, right? I think even maybe Facebook might have said, no, we don't want, really don't want. But was there that kind of a pushback like we seen in past attempts to suppress, freedom on the internet? No, like I say, it was tamped down a lot. Now, is that already as a result of what government's doing to suppress people like us? That's the thing. We're already in a position where we're trying to scratch our head and figure out, well, why is it? Is it the Canadians truly don't care? Is it truly that the masses are just that apathetic and unwilling to defend their freedoms and so entitled, right? It could very well be, tell you the truth, more than likely that is the plausible answer. But there's probably other contributing factors. But once again, because we're manipulated so much already, it's hard to understand. And now that the government has basically legal authority to manipulate as much as they want, I mean, think about how much more mind fucking that's going to come with that. Not just the limited amount of stuff that they're going to try to do in terms of what you can see or watch, but how much more they're going to do to try to manipulate you. Because once again, was it 3 or 4 bills in total? Bill C-11, Bill C-18 was the other one, Bill C-36. There's just all these bills that they're trying to do and get done. And it's all about, and we know, like I say, I've been watching and paying astute attention. It's not difficult to figure out when you're paying the kind of attention I've been paying that they're coming for those of us who are challenging the status quo and the establishment. That's what this is all about. No doubt about that. And like I say, I really, really, I wish, Steve, that we were in the majority position and most of our fellow Canadians. I wish 34 million other Canadians were willing to stand with us and say, you know what, I don't agree with you on a multitude of things, but I'm here to stand in solidarity with you in defense of our freedoms. You know, the old expression, I despise what you say, but I will fight to my death to defend your ability to say it, right? You're not hearing that too much. Right? Other than like I say, I admit there's a small subsection of the country, people like you or I, that do. But we are in such a minority position. Anyways, I want to get back, but yeah, thanks for that great question. And like I say, I'm at my wit's end too, Steve. And I'm not sure if you're familiar or comfortable with being online, but if you ever actually want to have a discussion, I'm always more than willing to bring people onto the live stream and actually have a chat. We can kind of look at each other in the eye to eye kind of thing, talk this stuff out. I definitely prefer that stuff, but yeah, it's rough, but it's just the fact. It's the fact that we have to deal with that. The majority of our fellow Canadian citizens, for whatever the reason is, I can't tell you what the reason is behind the 34 or 39 million Canadians, right? But I just know that the reality is they have not taken the chance or made that stance to put a foot out there and say no, this is important. So that part of it, at least, it doesn't look real good now. Doesn't mean it's set in stone. Doesn't mean that things can't change. Anyways, let me scroll back here. Weak men create hard times. Okay, here's another question. Aaron LaPlante. What can one do to stand against these dumb laws they keep pushing? Honest question. So Aaron LaPlante. So once again, so I'll just mention to you as well. So if you're watching this live stream, or maybe you get a chance to watch it later on, is so like I say, the VPN, Key Scrambler, definitely for sure. And I would even recommend, like I say, for me in particular, because Elon Musk, I know, well, he has said that he will follow like laws per se, but he's not going to play ball quite as easily with big government as maybe some of the other social media platforms. So I will say, for me, my ISP is Starlink. I get my internet, don't deal with any Canadian infrastructure whatsoever. I deal with Starlink, which is an American-owned company, and the satellites are up in space, right? So I will say that may be one other additional layer of protection that we may very well have, right? Because Bell and Rogers, it's in their best interest to play ball with the CRTC, right? Because they are CanCon predominantly, and they like obviously playing ball. They've become very cozy with government, whereas Elon Musk and Starlink, not so much. So having an internet service provider that's maybe a little adversarial towards government is a benefit. Having a VPN, at least for the interim, will definitely be a benefit. Using key scramblers of some kind would definitely be a benefit. And once again, there are also areas out there that you can look on, and most of you people are probably familiar with this on your browser, or if you're using your smartphone, whether you go to the Play Store or the Apple Store, or on your internet, you go to, like I say, your extensions, you can find other things that will help protect your privacy, security, and make your presence less prominent for big government to track and follow what you're doing on the internet. And like I say, a great source for that is EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, I believe is what it is. And like I say, that's a great publication. You can find that pretty much anywhere on social media. You can definitely find it on Twitter, and they've got recommendations as well. But that's definitely, and in terms of standing up. So here's another thing: you're not going to be able, at this point in time, you can't stop the law. It's already been done. And politics, you can always, once again, there's always the old adage that you can vote to try to get rid of them, and maybe hopefully the next government will get rid of it. I mean, that's all. I would never say don't try that, right? Not a big fan of the political process for the most part, but yes, support people in a political party who, at the very least, hopefully they're honest, right? If there's anyone in any political position or seeking to be, become the next leader, I don't know, Pierre Poilievre, I think he's kind of on board, right? With but that's the other thing too, is he talking at both sides of the mouth? Who would know? These are professional liars for the most part. So how do you know when they're telling the truth? I don't know. How do you know they're lying? Oh, their lips are moving. But anyways, one thing you could do is, like I say, actively support politicians, if you want to go the political route, who are willing to push back or get rid of Bill C-11, right? Because if it's a law that's passed, well, it can be removed as well, right? So that is something. And also, get people in your community. It's because really politics, just like I've said so many times before, and I take that phrase from, what was it, Breitbart? Politics is downstream of culture. So get as many people in your community in that culture, talk to them about these things. Because to me, this is vitally important, because there's a lot of people who might not even know. They're apathetic by the sheer fact that they just don't pay attention. Those people, you might be able to entice those people to start caring, because a person that's ignorant by the fact that they just don't have access to this information or haven't actively sought it out, well, those are people that you can help to bring around. And I would definitely suggest that. And people in every one of your communities, have little events, rent your local rec center or something and say, let's hold an event to talk about how can we, gain back some of those freedoms we lost. What are ways that we can start to affect our culture, where the people within our culture, within our communities, are going to be more active and proactive in standing up in defense of these rights and freedoms. Because once again, that people need to be inspired to do things, but they also need to even understand what's happening. Because if they're ignorant to these facts and not knowledgeable on this stuff, well, they really need someone like you or I to help them. So, like I say, reach out to people in your community, your coworkers, friends, family members, neighbors, as many people as you can. Talk to them about this stuff, right? Get them actively engaged. Give them something, because people today, a lot of them lack meaning in their life. Standing in defense of something as important as freedom of speech might be that thing that gives someone that meaning in their life, something to give them something to wake up for every day. So, like I say, whether they're young or old or anywhere in between, speak to as many people as you can about how important it is to start talking about these things and to start not just voting, but changing your culture in your own community so that, the whole point, how you keep government at bay is making your communities more self-reliant, more self-sufficient, and less reliant on externalities such as government. That's the key, folks. That really, at the end of the day, is the key. And of course, there's other areas, right? So, and be free. We have a thing that's happening in Canada. I'm not sure if some of you folks are familiar with this, but Mark Vandermoss, I had a discussion with him. What's it been? Probably a few weeks ago now. But he basically set this thing up where we're trying to emulate the New Hampshire Free State Project. Because if you're a freedom-oriented person or you're a liberty lover, especially in Canada, right? Because at least the US is more predisposed, and especially some other states, to being staunch advocates of liberty. Canada, not quite as much. But even in the US, what they recognize is, yeah, if you have tens of thousands of libertarians, let's say, scattered all over the country in the 48 mainland states, very boisterous, punch way above their weight, but how effective are they when they're just a tiny, tiny, drop in an ocean, right? Not so much. But what if you take all those drops, put them all in the same pond? Well, or a very small pond or a puddle, right? All of a sudden, it can affect real change there. And that's what the New Hampshire Free State Project is. It's been, what is it, almost 20 years in the making, I believe now. But basically, they've got thousands and thousands and thousands of liberty lovers, liberty oriented people, people that care about their freedoms, that are moving to jurisdictions and localities in New Hampshire and making that a grassroots thing. And because their culture is dominated by people who care about freedom, well, at least in that area, right? The politics of that area is much more conducive to accepting and promoting and adhering to the fundamental aspects of freedoms and liberty. So that's another thing. And once again, we're trying to replicate that here in New Brunswick. And New Brunswick is one of those places. New Brunswick is somewhat similar to New Hampshire in that we have a quite a small population, about 800,000, I believe, at the time. And like I've said in past live streams, we've had 3 different elections where two, the Green Party and the People's Alliance. Now, the Green Party would have been more on the left. People's Alliance, I don't know, would have been maybe more on the right. But we've showed that there's at least 3 jurisdictions, ridings in New Brunswick, where people who are willing to, election after election, to give someone who isn't the establishment a shot at it, right? And for a while, we had it pretty good, actually, with People's Alliance when they had the 3 seats and could hold Blaine Higgs' conservative government to account, because at that point, the Blaine Higgs government was in a minority position, and Blaine Higgs at that time could not impose the kind of mandates and restrictions that a lot of the other provinces were doing at the time, because People's Alliance were the buck stop, were the bulwark against it. Now, unfortunately, Chris Austin, the leader of that party, sold out on us, walked across the floor and joined the Conservatives, but the people voted for People's Alliance, and a substantial bunch of people even voted for the Green. But once again, it means it's fertile grounds for people who are willing to step outside the current paradigm, the current status quo. And with a small population, much easier to affect change, right? So there's, like I say, there's a multitude of things that you can do, we can all do. And maybe you could try that in your own jurisdiction, right? New Brunswick is one place. Now, you can't have too many, obviously, because then we're still going to all be scattered. But yes, try as much as you may, like, to start local. That's really, I got to tell you, folks, it starts here. And for me personally, I'll just say the biggest change had to start right here. Me, I had to change myself to best reflect the kind of ideals and principles that I espouse. So that's a continuous, ongoing process. Next was my immediate family members. And I had to lead by example. I had to show that it's not only a good thing, but it works out not just good for me, but everyone else too. Right. And then it kind of becomes almost contagious. And then, like I say, then just slip conversations in when you're just maybe at the water cooler, right? Just I always actively take any chance. I don't try to actively go out and just be a pain in the ass and torment people, talk about like, but if I can see any area where a conversation and I can interject in some way and talk about the things that maybe is aligned with what the conversation they're having at the time and bring up some of these concepts. I found it a lot of people can be quite receptive, right? Especially when you're doing it face to face instead of online, because it's quite easy to lose the nuance, right? And misinterpret what people are saying on the internet. But anyways, yeah. So those are just some of the things that I would say, Aaron Laplante. But thanks for the question. Um, Now, Aaron did say at this point we need to mirror what's happening in France. We just need to actually do it and not roll over so easily. Well, I mean, huge, massive protests, right? Now, I'm not a big fan of the well, I'm sure you're not talking about that anyways, but some of the things where I see where they're burning garbage bins and flipping over cars. I don't not advocating for any of that, but massive protests, because that's the other thing too. The only way, and I've said this so many times in the past, the only way a protest actually works if it's so huge in number that even the order followers, the optics wouldn't work for them, or they just, like I say, you know, even if you had 10,000 cops, right, all armed to the teeth and all, but you have a million, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like the optics of that, and the not just the optics, but the message that sends. That's like, holy crap! There's that many people. That that has that has the ability to work. But once again, as large as the numbers were, even in the protests in Ottawa, during the trucker convoy and stuff, what are we talking? Like I say, 10,000. Even if we went with numbers like 10, 20,000, once again, you're talking about a population of millions of people. So to the order followers, to the politicians, right, to the central planner types, are like, well, we still have the numbers, and they're right. We freedom fighters, we liberty lovers, we're the ones that need to garner the numbers, but we're not going to garner the numbers, and that's the other thing. If you're fighting with everyone in your family, and I got to tell you, I had some harsh relationship with some of my family members because of all the conflicts and disagreements over freedom and stuff. But I got to tell you, you got to really, and I'm even speaking to myself here, and I've learned this is you got to really pick your battles. Don't make more enemies than is needed or necessary, because those are the people, like the people that you're isolating or you're pissed off at, and maybe rightfully so. But, the more that divide grows, the more chance that they're gonna double down on that, right? So, try, what's that old expression? You get more bee with honey, right? More bees with honey. Try as best you can to at least reach out to the more reasonable people in your community or in your family or in your immediate environment. Because that's really how it has to work. It has to be grassroots. The top down thing that never ever works. It just creates more infighting. It creates this hierarchy thing where everyone's trying to battle each other for position. That stuff just ends up turning into a whole lot of infighting. Like I say, make it a personal thing as much as you possibly can. Because people, that's how we deal with each other. We're much better off and more apt to deal with each other on a person by person basis, or at least a couple. But when you get into the big mobs and the big groups, that's the brain it's almost like it turns off and you become into like the Borg, right? The race to the bottom or the lowest common denominator usually doesn't work out real well. But anyways, let me get back to checking on some of the actually comments here on the in the chat. In the chat. Wait a sec here. Oh, I better bring that off. Stop that. Bring this off. We know the bill passed, but what's their full law behind the curtain? We know the bill passed, but what's their full law behind the curtain? Not quite sure what you mean. The full law behind the curtain. Well, I mean, basically, the full law is they're going to actively try to, manipulate content to the point where, like I say, we're going to have our work cut out for us to be able to consume the kind of stuff that we've kind of been accustomed to consuming, or at least those of us who are proactive. That's the other thing. I got to always keep in mind that I'm talking about people that are mostly proactive in this stuff. You got to think about just the average Canadian, folks, the average Canadian, the unsuspecting average Canadian. To them, they're like, well, what are you talking about? Well, what's this going to? They're promoting Canadian content. What's wrong with it? Well, you got something against Canadian content. I actually had a couple of people say that in subsequent tweets to my original tweet is, what, you got something against Canadian content? It's like, well, first of all, I am Canadian. Tell you the truth, based on the rhetoric of the politicians, right, and the media who are promoting this thing, hey, I should be one of the greatest benefactor of it, because I am Canadian. I identify as the Canadian Libertarian, my channel. I don't even actively seek to, do big rounds of interviews with American content creators. I predominantly try to show that I'm a true blue Canadian kind of a guy, and I want to actively seek out and talk with other Canadians, right? As much as I could go on the whirlwind tours and get all this pop. To me, this is my backyard. I kind of gotta care about this stuff, right? And I kind of look at my American counterparts like, you guys are doing good. At least you got a whole lot more people out there, standing up for freedom and liberty. And because your republic style of system and how decentralized your states are from federal powers, in a much, much better position to weather the storm. Canada, like I said, I recognize this is the place. And I also recognize that there's such great talent. And it's a sad thing that Canadian talent always seem to have to go to the US, right? To achieve any amount of success. But that's the reason why that is because America, just like with all these social media platforms, they invent these things, right? What's the Canadian equivalent of Facebook or Twitter, right? Or YouTube? I have no idea. I have no idea. So I don't worry too much about the Americans. They're probably going to be okay, or at least better than we up here in Kanakistan. So, like I say, I am Canadian, born and raised, lived here my whole life, right? I am the Canadian Libertarian, right? I talk about Canadian-oriented stuff. I talk to Canadians. But I'm not foolish or naive enough to think, oh, the Trudeau's out there standing up for me, right? Oh, that's the political language. And this is the thing. Most unsuspecting Canadians that aren't as privy to the kind of knowledge that we have, they're probably thinking, oh, well, that's just the Trudeaus. They want more Canadian content. Good for them, kind of thing, right? They don't realize, to them, they don't see the deception, which is why it's so important for us to not just point it out. And that's the other thing too. If you're going to bring, facts to the equation or any conversation or dialogue you're going to engage with, make sure you can back that up and source it. Because people are so used to just listen to all kinds of perspective opinions that are so subjective. It's like, yeah, whatever, right? But if you can show some evidence or use logic and reason, right? Use good logic and reason as the basis for your arguments, and you'll get, and without being too domineering in the conversation, and most people, I think, will at least actively engage themselves in dialogue with you and maybe start to think more critically about this. Because this is something, like I say, now that requires a little bit of work, but that is what has to take place. If this is ever going to happen, if we're going to get into a position where we have a society of Canadians who actively care and are willing to proactively stand in defense of those freedoms, right? Then we have to get people up to speed. And I've done this. I will just point this out. I like sharing my own content, of course, but I also share a tremendous amount of content from other people, because to me, at the end of the day, I have my own selfish desires like everyone else. But at the end of the day, as long as someone's getting that information, of course, I'd like for them to hear it from me. But if they have to get it from someone else, as long as they're getting the information at the end of the day, go for it. So put your ego in check. Some of you, although I think most of you folks that are watching the stream don't have too much of an issue with that, but maybe talk to others. Put your ego in check. Even myself, I've had past disagreements with some people, right? Especially during the whole PPC days, right? Put your grievances aside, folks, right? Put your anger and resentment. Even for someone like Frank Vaughn, me and Frank kind of had a bit of a falling out, and we probably still don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. But for the sake of standing in freedom, you know, I'm willing, like, to show a little humility, and like if it means we all come together as a show of unity, where all of our voices, where we can show, because that's a really big thing for me. If we could actually show that those of us in Canada that true the independent types, if we could show that we could all come together, even just us, right? And that would be quite a small minority, but some really prominent people. There are some really great Canadians out there, I got to tell you, folks. But if you could get those people to come together in a show of solidarity and unity, I think that would do wonders to make that permeate down through the culture. It'd have to be something for people to actually, it'd have to be a spectacle for people to behold, right? So maybe in some big venue. I don't know, but something definitely has to take place, right? For sure. Anyways, let me just move on here a little bit. I'm going to scroll down to, sorry, folks, there's a lot of chats, and I'm sorry I'm way behind the ball here, but oh, we had, yeah, sorry, but what's the issue between you and Frank Vaughn? Yeah, we had a falling out. I don't like to talk about people behind their back per se, but we had a bit of falling out over the PPC thing. Got into an exchange back and forth in messaging where it was, he insults, then I retaliate, and then, just back and forth to the point where, yeah, it's like just butted head and just walked away kind of thing. And we haven't really had much of a conversation since. Although I did kind of see, we've had a couple minor interactions on Twitter recently. Not great, but it did kind of seem, at least, that tensions seemed somewhat subdued, and neither of us tried to escalate. So seems like there's potential that those tensions could eventually be alleviated. Like I say, with a lot of other people, what it really came down to at that time is when I know I'm right about something that can be right, right, objectively so, not subjective. Like, you can't be right about the color blue is the best. That's a subjective stance. There's no such thing as right or wrong, right? But when I know I'm right about something, and it can be proven to be true objectively, yeah, I can be quite defiant. And you almost have to, because what do? Right? Just let people walk over you and tell lies and just go along with it just so you can become, or maintain your friendliness? No. And some people don't like to be, pushed back against, right? We all just I'm a man too. We all have egos, right? And it can affect you when you get into confrontations, which is why, to me, it's we like I say, we have to worry less about, the chest pumping and trying to outdo each other kind of thing. And like I say, put I don't know, put a little bit of the ego aside, replace it with a little humility, which I've been myself even trying to do as much of that as humanly possible. And at that point in time, I think we could possibly get somewhere, because, like I say, a lot of great minds out there, and I think if we all kind of came together, put our minds together, and like I say, showed solidarity with each, I think that could be beneficial. Although, once again, another part of me thinks, though, too, maybe it's best that we're all decentralized, right? I don't know. It's really hard thing to do, but yeah, with Frank, it wasn't overly huge, nothing major, I would say. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like I say, I had lots of good conversation with Frank back in the day, and I liked Frank. That's why we had chats. Actually, if you wanna go back through my YouTube channel and type in Frank, I think you could probably see, or even on his channel, unless he's deleted them. But yeah, we had some great conversations back in the day. And like I say, I don't hate on Frank. Frank is someone that seems to care about standing up for freedom. So good for him, right? At the very least, he's not my enemy, at least when it comes to that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, it is a I predominantly, it's guys and their egos. And once again, I'll accept some of the blame too, but I'm not going to accept it all, right? Two sides, right? So So, like I say, I've admitted that I'm willing to put aside some of the things with some of the people in the past, if they're willing to as well. I am, because I tell you, folks, it's really important we start doing as much as we can to stand up for these freedoms that we're seemingly losing on a regular basis. Yeah, I hear you, Anarcha. As an American, I can say that average Americans are not standing up for anything. Well, I hear you. Well, I mean, some are though, right? But not. I think I get what you're saying is because you're an American and you're used to gauging that based on American context and American history. I can see how it would seem greatly subdued compared to maybe other times in your life. But there are some, right? But I hear you. I think in every one of our countries, we're just so frustrated and so overwhelmed daily with so much soul crushing nonsense that it does become profoundly difficult to keep a positive, inspirational message. And I'll even admit I find it hard for myself. I find it really hard at times. But the other, like I say, to let it defeat me, no, no, can never allow that. But I hear what you're saying, Anarchy. I hear what you're saying. Okay, let me just get. I'm just scrolling back up here. Get a couple more comments. Hey, there's my son. Hey, Aaron, say what's going on? I got my son's in the live stream apparently there. So what's Aaron saying? Sadly, seems like a large number of Canadians back the pride or lack the pride and courage to stand up for their freedoms or even acknowledge them. That's true, Aaron. This is so true, so true. And thanks for joining the stream, man. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, my son's another perfect example of someone that had a really, really, really popular channel on YouTube there for quite some time. Aaron Say What was actually his channel, and he had the silver play button, had like over 140,000 subscriber. And I remember even back then, this was when YouTube, even back then, right? When they started messing around because of political activism and identity politics and crazy stuff about control and all this stuff is I remember even back then they started messing around with the algorithms because YouTube really early on, well, early YouTube was like the best ever, right? I mean, it's just anything and everything on YouTube, no restrictions, no nothing. I mean, you could of course, once they started getting into monetizing, once they started having content creators and partnership programs and all that stuff, they started getting into more technical aspects of it. They started using algorithms. Well, there was a point that that algorithm, they started tweaking those things and started putting all these different rules and restriction impositions. And a lot of people, even people like my son, he was just doing games and gaming stuff on YouTube, and he had nothing to do with it. He wasn't doing any political stuff at all. Just but manipulating the algorithm even back then affected a tremendous amount of people, not just people like my son, but a lot of other people. It massively affected. And it seems that once you get out of the algorithm, right, in any way, good luck getting back. It literally is almost like a cancel culture thing that once you're out, you're out. There's no way of getting back in, it seems, right? And that's just for content. So even like I say, even if Aaron was doing the content he was doing today, well, based on Bill C-11, he would have never even got to the point of having that amount of success that he had at that time. If Bill C-11 existed, what he did wouldn't probably even have been considered Canadian content. And I got to tell you, he worked really hard to build his channel, put out a lot of great content, helped a lot of people along the way, right? Because they don't just do these things playing games. They talk with the people, in the conversation and stuff, about personal things and stuff. But once again, that even content like that could have been affected. And so it's not just people like myself, right? It's a multitude and a myriad of people from all different walks of life and background and diversity, right? Actual diversity who are going to be affected by this. Which to me it makes no sense. other than the fact it's all about control. Just like with the vaccine mandates, all about control. The mask mandates, all about control. Bill C-11, it's all about control. Because the pretense about Canadian content, like I said, you can watch any Canadian content you watch right now. Well, before Bill C-11, right, come to exist, you can watch any content you want, Canadian, American, anyone. So there was nothing limiting or restricting Canadian content on the internet. It was all out there and freely available for consumption by any one of us. So there was nothing restricting it. So why now? Why impose these new mandates on the CRTC to start picking winners or losers now, right? Well, once again, it's all about control. The simplest answer, the simplest explanation is usually the most applicable. And that seems like the most applicable and simplest explanation is it's all about control, folks. That's really what it is at the end of the day. Hey, Scotian Southerly. Hey, Hunter. Hope all is well. Yeah, if that's you, Matt. Yeah, hope nice to see you in the live stream too, Matt. And I hope you're doing really well as well, my friend. And I'm doing okay, man. Doing okay. Tor browsers compromised. I think it was 2016. The Glowies managed to figure it out, peel it open, and get into it. You might be right about that, bearded ginger. You may very well be right about that. I'm not 100% sure on that, but boy, oh boy, right? Anyways, yeah. So I'm just reading. I'm just love watching or reading the comments here. I could actually read all your folks' comments for days. I just love it. But anyways, let me get back over here to Twitter and see if we got some more questions. And then I'm probably soon going to tie this live stream up. Like I say, I really appreciate all you folks that did come and join it. But we are bumping up on, I believe, the 2 hour mark here. Well, 137. We'll go for a little bit while longer. Let me just check on, like I say, some of the comments and questions on Twitter. Yeah, let me bring it right back up here. Present, share. There we go. So actually, let me just go to this one. So this was my original tweet. Let me actually just check and see how it is doing. Let me just reload it here. Okay, so this was my thread. Okay, so we got 61,000 views so far. So it's doing pretty decent, not too bad. At least Twitter, I get a little bit more traction. 583 retweets, 27 quotes. Let's see some of these comments here. Number of views you tweeted so clearly people are paying attention. Oh yeah, so this one, I look at the number of views you tweet so clearly a lot of people are paying attention. And that's the thing, 61,000 views, but that's the thing, 61,000 views, only 30. So people, there's 61,000 views. Don't get me wrong, it's pretty good. Although at the time when this person commented, it wasn't near that. It was probably only just 10 or 20,000 or so. But once again, in comparison, contrast to the 38 or 39 million Canadians. Now, I'm not saying that everyone is sitting on the internet, but even if 30 million, think about what the number, even 61,000 out of 31 million, quite small, really, right? Very, very tiny in terms of the percentage of the population, which that was the reply anyways. And so the cycle keeps turning. Bill C-11 and by extension the prevailing Canadian zeitgeist has been enabled by a life that was too comfortable and a population too entitled or apathetic to appreciate all the work required to keep a society free. I wish it wasn't so. That was a great comment by Lady of Null, and I really appreciate that. J Gen Xer. I honestly do not completely lost with the idea that Canada is now a country where we are being 100% censored and the left cult is excited to have more parental control over their life. How did we become such a country when people feel they cannot just scroll past what they don't want to see and read and feel the only safe option for them is more government control over everyone? I'm at a loss. Canada's broken. And like I put down below, I share your concerns, and And I really do. Actually, I didn't read my actual tweet, so I probably should read that. So, Bill C-11 is set to become law as early as this evening, yet there's barely a peep from my fellow Canadians about the fact that the Trudeau Liberals, with the help of others, could soon turn the free and open internet into cable TV 2.0. Younger generations have no idea how restrictive and limiting it will be to have government controlling everything they watch or listen to because they have never lived under such conditions. Older generations who have should have been vigorously defending these freedoms, the freedoms attained by having access to everything the internet has to offer. However, as with so many other inherent rights and freedoms, most Canadians seem unwilling to defend them in any way. And so it is another sad day for we liberty lovers in Canada. And it really is. But I got to tell you, at the very least, it kind of fills my heart a little bit of hope, right? That's the beauty of having folks like you out there and actively engage in these conversations and your comments and your replies and your retweets and stuff. It really does give me some hope. And if you folks are giving me hope, I kind of like to think that I'm helping to reciprocate that as well. And that's what we got to do. Like I say, and we got to inspire others. We really, and there might be more fertile grounds there, especially after the last 3 years of COVID. There might be some genuine fertile grounds, whereas 3 years ago, maybe they would have been unwilling to listen to you, right? Maybe now, maybe give it a shot, right? What's the worst? That's the other thing. And I got to constantly remind myself too. What's the worst thing can happen if I beat my ego down a little bit and just reach out to someone that I've had past disagreements with? What's the worst thing can happen? They say, no, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Not the end of the world, right? Call you a name or two. Not like I haven't had that before. So, that's the thing. I think that's another area where I think we can do a little better. And once again, I'm talking to myself as well as maybe some of you folks too, is yeah, try to mend as many fences as we can, or at least the ones that are worthy of mending, right? Yeah, and this was actually this part here. This was the one that I actually linked. This open media. That was the one that I linked, and there'll be a few other ones that I'll link in it as soon as the live stream is done. This is another one that was talking about how they had replied. And yes, would a VPN help? Tia Alexandra asked, would a VPN help? And I would say, even right now, you're probably not going to have to use a VPN right off the bat. Although it may. I don't know how quick this is going to roll out and unfold. Like I say, it seems like they're still going to go through some consultation with the CRTC, kind of get their ducks all in order, right? So at least for the next little while in the interim, probably going to be okay. But I would definitely, yeah, a VPN is probably at the very least, bare minimum, a good idea, right? Although I hate to say that because I know a VPN costs money, and I hate to suggest to people to spend money maybe that they don't have, right? Especially if I don't know if it's actually going to help you in any right way, right? But if you think that it might be something that you're interested in, and if you can afford it, it's not a bad idea. Put it this way: it is definitely not a bad idea to have a VPN, because what a VPN is, just a virtual private network. So basically, internet traffic travels in and out of these servers, and when they come out the other side, it's typically more difficult to trace that process through the whole thing, right? So at least you can kind of get lost in the fray if you're using a VPN, so they can't constantly be monitoring and tracking you. Because that's the other thing that this Bill C-11 is, they're going to be, obviously these things are going to be basically watching over everything that we consume, right? These, not people per se, although I'm sure there will be some people, but I would imagine mostly just automated AI kind of stuff, right? Um, more people replying that they spoke up. Yeah, not much coming from legacy media. No, that's for sure. Oh, and that was another thing actually I shared. Let me actually show you this, folks. So this is today, actually. This is today. Um, the front page of CBC, if you go to their CBC News web page, this was the front page, and this is the big, like, this is the centerpiece, right? This is the main one. Sometimes you know how it'll either be fill this whole thing, or sometimes it's set up like this, where it's just off to the side. So this was the main headline article. There was this. And look, it wasn't even the most popular thing being talked about. It was all the way down. Like, there's only five, and it was 4 out of 5, with only 227 people in Canada that were reading about the controversial bill to regulate online streaming becomes law. right? So people are getting access to this information freshly. This is new, right? This just passed yesterday. So this is new, and yet it's only getting this kind of attention. Now, I can't help but point out, right? This is being reported. So it passed on Thursday evening. So Friday was the first full day of reporting on it. Friday, right? Like I've mentioned many times in the past, a lot of the worst things to be reported, things that are bad for us, it pertains to our rights and freedoms. This stuff gets reported on a Friday. And it seems to be done on purpose because they recognize that most people on Friday are just thinking about what they're doing on the weekend or getting busy to, maybe go to the cottage or Friday night, probably not the night that you're going to be spending most of the time sitting on the internet. You might actually be that time where or the weekend where you're going to actively go out and avoid all this bullshit, right? So, or you'll forget about it by Monday because it gives you the whole weekend before you're back to thinking about this stuff. So it seems like they kind of do that stuff, manipulate it on purpose. But yeah, it wasn't the most important thing being talked about on on CBC. So I mean, it's rough, folks. Oh, and this person asked, was it on TV? This was actually kind of good too, Kyle David. Unfortunately, the older generation still alive in Canada today never had to fight for any of their freedoms. Their parents did. This is the result of a generation thinking this could never happen in Canada. We defeated the commies in the war. Wow. That's great point. And yeah, that's what I actually replied. Tim Allen. Right on. Home improvement. Tim Allen answers me. No, it's not really that Tim Allen. This was replied. But your people voted the fascists back in less than 2 years ago. You have your only yourselves to blame. Obviously, it wasn't me, but in a way, I kind of get what he's saying. Exactly how should we have more vigorously opposed it? I wrote the MPs, senators signed. Oh yeah, and this is just someone. Um, I'm seeing a lot of folks speaking out. Well, that's the other thing too. The kind of people like myself that do speak out, we tend to surround ourselves with other like-minded people who tend to speak out. So that's the thing. I could say I've seen quite a few people speaking out, but once again, I have to put it in proper context that these are people that are a very small minority of people like myself who actually care about and are actively on a daily basis fighting for the freedoms in a multitude of ways and on multitudes of subject topics or issues, right? But there's a whole big cohort of our fellow Canadians are it's crickets, just crickets. Um, Here we go. What's this one? The thing to do if the government uses C-11 to censor content they don't like, which they will, is to begin meeting in real life. Use Twitter to distribute localized info meetings in cities and towns, or build these from Twitter Spaces. Could even develop code. Actually, I'll give that one a like. That's a pretty darn good suggestion, to be honest with you. Meeting in real life it is really important, folks, and it may get to that point where that's the only time you're going to get a chance, right? And this could also be, like I said, Robert Erickson mentioned they don't understand or know about it yet, and that could very well be the reason for the apathy. Although you got to think, Bill C-11 has been talked about in and out of the news for the last 2.5 years. It's I don't know, and it affects the internet. I just find it so hard because almost everyone's on the internet these days, right? I just find it so hard that people can't know anything about this at this point in time, right? But yes, it sadly it probably is a true statement for a lot of people, unfortunately. Um, all the more reason to boycott the internet. Oh dear. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to boycott the internet, but hey, teach their own, I guess. Uh, my feed is nothing. Um, just reading a few more here. May have to leave Canada. Get VPN. Remember, it didn't start. So, yeah, that's a good meme. I truly think Canadians care. They just don't hear about it because they rely on MSM for information. It will be even harder now to get message out. But that's the thing. Like, that is kind of true. But is it really like it's? I don't know. Is it? I suppose though. It's sad though that there could be so many Canadians that don't have even just one person. See, this is what I mean. Think about it. That would literally mean that these people would have not one person in their life like me or you that are saying, you really should care about this stuff, right? So once again, that just kind of solidifies what I was saying earlier, just how important just minor little things like just actively going out and to speaking people, like I say, in your community, your neighbor, your friends, coworkers, family members, whatever. Like speak to people on your teams, like if you play sports and stuff. Because yeah, maybe they don't know this, but once you inform them, then they can no longer the excuse of ignorance. Ignorance is no can no longer be the excuse if you inform them, right? Which is what I try to do on a regular basis. Sometimes it's receptive, a lot of times not so. But at the very least, the people who have ever heard me, at the very least, they can never say, "I he never told me" or "he never warned me." They can never say that, right? Yeah, a lot of people talking about investing in VPN. Boy, I gotta tell you, I'm not a big I don't usually play the stocks, but I gotta tell you, after today, probably not the worst idea to not just get a VPN, but maybe invest in VPN companies, right? Because seems like they might be doing a little bit better going forward. Um, it's unbelievable. And one day after they announced stage one gun buyback plans, yeah, like these are coincidence. Holy shit. Last 3 years, can't protest, lose your firearms, can't see what's real. No big deal. Yeah. Damien Iwaski. Yeah. Great point. And thanks for mentioning that stuff. The worst thing is so many people didn't even hear about it. I sent the petition to some friends of mine and they had no clue what Bill C-11 was about. Explained it to them and it was like they didn't care. Soon enough, they will care. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's when they did know and you inform them, the fact that they said they didn't care, yeah, that kind of apathy, right? Ah, boy, that's frustrating. It's a dark day. Whoops. In Canadian history, the beginning of the WF strategy to fully install a democratic dictator. Next up, digital IDs and CBDCs. Yeah, gotta say, right? Historically, people would say, "You're a conspiracy theorist." Huh? You know, not a wise idea to call people conspiracy theorists that are talking about stuff like this these days, because all those conspiracy theories about COVID turned into facts, right? So, yeah, yeah. We live in socialist Canada, unfortunately. Unfortunately. You know, we should really actively try to change that. As many of us as possibly can. And I always like to point out too that even though we're massively outnumbered by the tyrants and the mindless order followers, I gotta tell you, for every 20 of them, uh, just one of us, the power of what we have to say, our fortitude, right? Yeah, will not just match, but greatly surpass. So we're outnumbered, but not necessarily outgunned in every way. Right. Right. And in terms of the gun buyback, let me just mention this in terms of the gun buyback thing. I know of one, possibly two relatives that, you know, had actually some really nice older rifles. And, you know, they come to find out, like, what was it? Probably, I think one was a couple of years ago, and I think the other one was quite a few years ago. But find out that they actually were stolen. Their weapons were stolen. So they went to all the bother of buying these guns, right? As a means to, hunt or maybe for self defense or whatever the reason why they had them. But didn't turn out to work out very well for them because someone else stole the damn things, right? What do you do when your guns have been stolen? Kind of hard to get your money back for them, right? When you don't even have them anymore because someone stole them. I've even heard of guys actually before out, you know, out sitting in a tree stand or whatever, and they just, you know, had to go take a leak or something. Next thing you know, weapon's gone again, and they don't have their gun. Well, can't buy back a gun that I don't even know where it is anymore. It's gone. Someone stole it. It's just stuff like that happens. It's crazy. I know. Sad, sad thing. So many thieves on this planet, but there are a lot of thieves, a lot of guns, a lot of everything. But yeah, a lot of guns get stolen, right? um, whoops. I keep clicking on them as if I'm going to highlight. Wait, I got to go back here. Sorry. Where'd that go? I went back too far. Anyways, folks, like I say, I gotta go back here. Shoot, now I've completely lost it, haven't I? There we go. Tweet is deleted by tweet author. What is this? What is this? Okay, why I seem to have. Oh, wait. Okay. All right. Actually, I'm just going to pull that off there because I seem to have lost my place on on my Twitter feed. But anyways, I got to check a few of them. But yeah, there was lots of comments, actually, tons and tons of comments on Twitter, and I really, really appreciative to see some folks out there who are showing care and concern for the rights and freedoms. And like I say, if you're one of those people who do, then my tweets are not directed at you, and hopefully, like I say, the people who aren't, right. Matter of fact, the people who probably, out of that 61,000 views, the ones that just scrolled by and never commented, those are the ones, right, that I'm hoping that at least stick in their mind, at least for a little while, right? At least for a little while. Anyways, I'm just going to see anything left on. Okay, let's see what this one is here. If you're going to use a VPN, it's costly, but Nord has a yearly plan. It's $89 for a year, and it's fast. I've never had a problem with the nodes I am connected to for speed. Well, thanks for mentioning that there, Bearded Ginger. I really appreciate that. Yeah, freedom ain't cheap. Yep, requires some sacrifice. That's so true. So true. Thick beaver. People need to start doing more in real life stuff. They can censor speech. They can't censor speech in person. Yeah, I'm with you. And you know what? That's something, like I say, that's something that, yeah, really, I want to get into more too. And especially now that the warmer weather's coming around. Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. In real life. And I will just point out, um, there's a lot of, now I'm not sure if you're libertarian or not, but in Ontario in particular, the Ontario Libertarian Party, they would host a lot of like pub night events, even, right? So definitely check them out. The Ontario Libertarian Party. I'm not sure if they're still doing it, or reach out to some other people in the libertarian community, perhaps in the big jurisdictions in particular, or even anywhere in your locality. And yeah, look at like setting up things where people can come together and talk about these important issues. Sovereign monk. To become a dictatorship, all dissent must be eliminated. That is so true. That is so true. And they're working hard at doing it. They are genuinely working hard at doing it. Boycott the internet, said by some. Yeah. Yeah, I know, right? It's incredible how many people form their opinion based on what they hear. So if dissent is silenced, people will stop dissenting. Oh my goodness, that is so true. That's so true, Sovereign Monk. Like I say, I really appreciate all you folks who have joined the stream. I'm going to tie it up there now. We're basically bumping up on 2 hours, but like I say, I really appreciate it. And, I'm definitely got lots more to say, and I'll be doing a lot more content going forward. We're going to try to figure this stuff out, folks out there. Like I say, there's some great minds in this country. It's just a matter of getting some of these minds together. And like I say, do whatever you can in your own personal situation and circumstance. Any little thing that you can. And never give up hope and never sell yourself short, right? Even if you only know a few people, you're like, oh man, I got no reach. Trust me, every little bit counts. And man, if I can't emphasize this enough. Do not worry about if even myself, like I'd love to have hundreds of thousands, millions of people, but you know what? You never know who that one person or that two people or there are very few people. You never know what kind of effect you're going to have. So, like I say, put the information out there as much as possible. Try to reach as many people as possible because there's lots of great minds out there, and you might spark the interest of someone that will be the next great mind to come up and invent new ways to circumvent government censorship, right? So just like I say, do whatever you can to get this kind of information out to as many people as humanly possible. Do it in a productive, friendly, leave the hostilities aside, right? Because like I say, it doesn't really work too well. The left doesn't seem to be able to understand this at all, and good on them. I hope they never learn that, right? To be honest with you. But for those of us who actually genuinely care about freedom and liberty, say the old adage, you get a lot more bees with honey. It is a very true statement. So try as best as you can. Be as patient as you can. I work on that on a regular basis. I'm patient to a certain degree, and then I'm like, okay, like then I just get frustrated. But I've been working on that myself, and like I say, we're actively trying. And I mean, just keep this in mind: the fact that big government are so desperate to try to silence and suppress our voices. I mean, at the very least, the one positive takeaway that you should be able to get from that is we're obviously our voices are obviously quite powerful and a threat to the ruling establishment. So much of a threat that they're willing to go through all of this to silence and suppress our voices. So, give yourself a little pat on the back at the very least for the fact that not only have you garnered the government's attention, but they're obviously scared shitless of what you have to say and offer. So, ideas are very powerful. The truth is extremely powerful. And those are the things that we have on our side. So, don't sell yourself short and don't let yourself get too beat up over it. Enjoy the weekend while you can. Enjoy yourself, right? This stuff will be here again on Monday. But like I say, even out there on this weekend, if you do get any chance, right, to actively have a conversation with people about this kind of stuff, do it. Do it, folks. Don't be shy. Don't skirt away from it, and see what kind of reception you might get. You might be pleasantly surprised. Anyways, have a great weekend, everyone. This is the Canadian Libertarian.